Revelation 2334. From the 13th of May 1942. Teaching activity. The gift of teaching must be sincerely requested, for the will to carry out this teaching activity is the first condition and must be expressed through heartfelt prayer to God. The teacher has to be specially trained for his task, thus a person cannot carry out this activity arbitrarily. Every person can indeed preach love to his fellow human being and urge him to live a right way of life, yet in order to be able to instruct his fellow human being, the person himself must first have been introduced to knowledge which he can now pass on. And this knowledge encompasses many areas which are closely related to each other, but which people do not recognize. It also requires a well-developed intellectual thinking in order to find every connection and to be able to use the knowledge accordingly. For the world will only ever want to accept what is a worldly product, that is what has been gained through research and pondering. But this does not always correspond to the truth, and if the truth is now to be spread, then well-trained forces must be able to refute what is not truth. They must be able to explain the connection of all things logically and clearly, and in order to be able to do so they must make contact with the giver of truth himself, because otherwise they cannot prove the correctness of their teachings. They must not build on existing spiritual knowledge, since this can also be doubted, but they must have their knowledge from the ground up from a source which remains inviolable even for doubters and scoffers. However, they must not be forcibly guided into knowledge either, but completely free will must have brought it to them so that people shall recognize what they are able to achieve through the right use of free will. And therefore heartfelt prayer must precede it, and God's willingness to be active for the spiritual benefit of fellow human beings must be assured. Such a will and prayer for strength also results in systematic teaching. Knowledge is made accessible to the human being which he must now first acquire himself, that is, which he must incorporate into his body of thought in order to be able to apply it whenever he needs it. The gift of teaching is likewise a gift of grace from God, for it presupposes a sharp memory, a lightning-quick grasp and logical thinking. Yet where the will is expressed for this teaching activity out of love for fellow human beings, God will distribute this gift, and the human being will then be able to carry out this activity. He will be enabled by God to carry out an extraordinarily significant ministry, for this is intended to spread the truth on earth. The meaning and purpose of creation shall become clear to those who cannot believe blindly. The human being's task on earth shall be understandable to them, and they shall have the opportunity to believe if they want to, as soon as they thoroughly examine the teachings which are now offered to them through an instrument of God. The intellect should also be allowed to be active, and therefore truth must be offered to people such that the thinking person can also become convinced that what is offered is truth. And this is only possible if the context of all things can be explained to him, which again is only possible through a person who has been instructed by God himself for the very purpose of being able to have an enlightening effect. And all prior knowledge has to be eliminated, for even where truth is advocated, error is also taught at present, since God's adversary found fertile ground everywhere for the seed he wanted to sow amongst humanity. And people are unable to separate truth from error without the help of the Divine Spirit. Consequently, they should surrender what they possess and receive the pure truth unconcealed, which God will send to humanity once again. Amen.